we're here for another CleanTech EV news show from inside David Havasi's house. We have an actual studio now where we can almost touch each other. Actually, we can touch. It's a trick. It's a virtual trick. No, it's not. This is real life. So we're here to talk EV news, CleanTech news, and we're going to start with it's a big story that's sort of gone under the radar, in my opinion. So we have, one of the great things on CleanTechnica is we have reporters from around the world. We have in the Philippines, in Kenya, in Chile, Colombia. So we have actually like CleanTech news that comes from around the world, and sometimes it's not really noticed by a lot of the other sites covering the same kind of stuff that we cover. And one of those guys down in Chile, Juan Diego Selmin Mojica, has had news on the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y coming to that market. If you follow the South American electric vehicle market much, it's been quite neglected. It's not a big market for EVs. And one thing Juan has noted repeatedly is that the EVs that do get into these markets are often very overpriced, very expensive compared to how they're priced in Europe and North America. And so the big news here is not just that Tesla is going to Chile, but it's also that the Model 3 and Model Y are going to be quite affordable in Chile. They're not much different from what they cost in more mature EV markets, bigger EV markets around the world. So it's a really exciting development down there. And even going into that, other EV producers that have EVs there have been like, they knew what was coming, and they're offering more competitive prices as well. So you've got the BYD Dolphin at $28,000, MG ZS EV at $31,500 equivalent. BYD Yuan Plus, or Atto 3 as it's known in some markets, is $37,800. Kia Niro EV $42,000, and the Model 3 is equivalent to $42,000, and the Model Y equivalent to $45,200. So these are really, this is exciting. What do you have to say on this development?
Well, a couple of things struck me right off the bat. One is a theme that we're going to be seeing throughout this episode is it's Tesla and Asian automakers. Where is everybody else? Particularly domestic auto. Later on we'll see that Germans are in the game a little bit, but for the most part, holy moly, it is Asian automakers and Tesla in the game, and that's it. So that's one thing that right off the bat, I'm like, holy moly, we're on the same continent, and or at least we're a little north of them, and where's General Motors and Ford and even Stellantis for that matter, although Stellantis is playing another surprising role globally, which we can talk about later. The first thing that surprised me is Chile's the second largest auto market in South America, behind Brazil. Yeah. I did not know that. Yeah. So that was fair. That was an interesting tidbit. The second thing that came to mind for me, being a former Tesla sales person that I was, and being new to markets, my role at Tesla was I go into undeveloped markets and develop them from scratch. So
New York City, Florida.
Yeah, New York City and Florida were the two big ones that I helped start with Tesla, and that was before there was retail presence. So it was really and superchargers for that matter. Yeah. There was one supercharger on the East Coast and one on the West Coast when I got here. There's a lot more now. But that brings up my point. The first thing I thought of, what is this supercharger infrastructure like in Chile? Because that is when you're like, okay, Tesla is selling an EV at a great price. These other manufacturers are selling an EV at a great price. I always go to what is the superlative, because one of my sales tactics that I helped train at Tesla was the superlative approach. So what makes this the best? What is its superlatives? one of the primary ones for EV adoption is charging network. So it turns out that they are developing supercharger network down there. So
Yeah, that's. I'm going to take us on a little side tangent because I just wrote an article about Tesla's supercharger growth and implementing congestion charges in New York City, where there's like hundreds of Uber and Lyft drivers using Teslas, and of course, they got to charge quickly to keep making money. So there's a bit of an issue there. I was posing the question whether that's going to become a widespread thing, but I was also put all the historical framing. Originally, supercharging was supposed to be free for life for all Tesla drivers. They changed that eventually, but there was a lot of concern about the network growing as Tesla sales grew, especially as Model 3 production ramp up started. And it actually has. Like, they've grown the supercharger network tremendously. They just keep pumping them out. Every quarterly report, it gets like no attention. And I look at it and I'm like, wow, again, they increased by 29% year over year. I think it was 27 or 29%. And it's just every year. So it's key to having the EV. Yes. And this is what other automakers didn't get for years. Like a decade ago, we were like, you should partner with Tesla on supercharging. Finally, they have, starting this year. But it's just such a key. So, I mean, it's second nature for Tesla. Oh, we're going into Chile. We got to develop a supercharger network.
They have the playbook.
Yeah. So that's great. I didn't really think, I mean, I'm so used to it now. I wasn't even thinking to highlight the fact that, BYD Dolphin, MG ZS EV, BYD Wan Plus, they're all Chinese EVs. And then you got the Kia Niro EV from Korea. So this is what it is. And all these, in almost any, non-major market, it's Tesla and or Chinese EVs. And then maybe a sprinkling of Korean or German. But it's, I also had no idea. I was shocked that Chile has the second biggest auto market in South America. It's not the second biggest country. But one thing that he noted was that actually cars tend to be cheaper in Chile than in neighboring markets for some reason. He didn't know why. So it's also at play here is the fact that maybe these are very competitive prices, because if you're going to be in Chile, you have to have affordable car options. They just have a more competitive market, and that's why people buy more cars.
Yeah. So they adjust margins accordingly. I thought the affordability, that was another thing that really shocked me, because you hear these stories about like Levi's jeans is like couture in Japan.
My wife talks about it in Poland when she was a teenager. It was like they would call them levies, I think. They were like, and then we were talking to someone from
gotta get the levies.
Hungary. It was the same, like a couple weeks ago. It was the same deal. It was like the levies were like this big deal. Like if you had Levi jeans, like wow. And I was like, Levi's? Really? Jeans?
You get those at Kmart, I mean, they're great jeans, sure. But I mean, and then you have like Japanese tourists will come here and like buy crates of them and bring them back because they're just such a premium over there. And I don't know.
It's in the Hollywood world. Why are Levi's such a big deal?
Well, it's just one of those things. It's like how Buick is huge in China. Like, go figure.
Was it a big deal in movies at some point where Levi's?
I think certain cultures love Americana, certain things like Americana. Just like the Rodgers and Hammerstein old school musicals are like huge in China. Huge. They love like Americana.
But why does Levi's stand out?
I think Levi Strauss. I think it's this kind of established American brand.
Yeah.
And I think
we might be off topic now.
We are. But sorry.
My bad.
We got on tangents.
My bad.
But a pleasant surprise to see that they're not just that EVs aren't this kind of niche luxury. They're jacking the price up 25% or something crazy.
Yeah, so I mean that's one story, Chile. Second story we'll talk about here is Tesla. We have a world EV sales report from Jose Pontes, world leader in this field, and because there's so much in there, and he wanted to write more and more about these things, we've ended up breaking these out into three quarterly reports instead of one. One focuses on the models, one on the brands, one on the OEMs, the automotive groups. And so not a lot. I mean, at the top of the game, just let's just be frank. Tesla and BYD are in a whole different universe. Yes. So Tesla and BYD are in one universe. The rest of the EV market is in another universe. There's sort of like a mid-tier universe, we might say. But so that's the story. So not a lot of changes in that regard. This is exciting because we have the full year. This is for the full year report now. But what stands out, from a brand perspective, is that BYD dominates in plug-in vehicles. That includes their plug-in hybrids. They don't sell any non-plug-in vehicles anymore since about a year or more. But Tesla is by far second in plug-in vehicles, like far ahead of anyone else, but far behind BYD. But then in BEV sales, Tesla is the clear leader, and BYD is second for the year. But the one big bit of news at the end of the year, which I wrote about a few days before the end of the year because I figured out it was coming. It was like, there was no official numbers yet.
Oh, yeah.
But we figured out, hey, wow, BYD's going to do it earlier than I thought. They're going to have more BEV sales in the fourth quarter than Tesla. Mm-hmm. And that is a big deal. The question is whether that stays or changes, because also it's a Chinese New Year where sales drop a lot. So theoretically, Tesla should get its title back in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, I would put my money on BYD winning in 2024. Considering BEV sales, considering Tesla doesn't have a great growth year right now. BYD is still exporting to a lot of new markets, has new models all the time rolling out. And considering that it did this in the fourth quarter earlier than I expected, I think it's going to take the 2024 title. What are your thoughts on the brand sales report?
Well, first of all, we're talking. Well, first of all, the original numbers of BYD overall, I think it's important to note that is including the plug-in hybrid numbers for the year. We heard a lot of stuff from the bears online, like, oh, BYD beat Tesla. It's like, well, yeah, but that's including, they have a portfolio of plug-in gas cars, where and if you add those numbers up, sure, that boosts their numbers significantly. But like you said, if you look at overall the year, it was Tesla's year for BEVs, correct, in 2023. I think you are onto something there. I think in Q4 of 2023, and again, it could be argued of how much this would actually affect, but I do think there was I do think there was an Osborne effect for the Model 3, even though it was in the number 3 position. I do think it could be a contributor. I think people in the know knew that the refresh Model 3 was coming. So I think we're going to see a bump in that globally. It was released globally, but I think in the States, that we're going to see unit volumes there very high. They're going to bump. BYD, a couple things why they could take it in 2024. One, they have home field advantage in China. And two, they have more model variant, and just their distribution. I think they're in a much stronger place in that way.
So they have a lot of models, and they have two rolling out this year. The BYD Atto 3 we just wrote about is going to come out next year. Should be a big seller. I guess we never know how many people are new to the topic when we talk about this, and I've been doing these reports for a decade. So we have to put the context that the Chinese EV market has become the largest EV market in the world. It accounts for more than half of the world's EV sales. So if you're doing well in China, you're doing well globally. That's the story. If you look at
we saw that coming a mile.
Yeah, and we'll see that with others. 25% of new car sales in China were fully electric in 2023. So that's
crazy.
Fully electric, not plug-in hybrid. So it's a huge maturing EV market, and BYD and Tesla are the leaders. BYD is the clear leader in terms of brand or group. Tesla still has its two big models at the top, but yeah, I mean, Tesla gets more of its global sales elsewhere, of course, from the US and Europe, and BYD does not. So yeah, if the Chinese market grows faster than the rest of the world, BYD is going to have an advantage. If the rest of the world grows faster, historically Tesla has an advantage, but now BYD is going into so many new markets that might change.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
You already have them operating in the biggest market, China, and then they're expanding. Another thing is they have a portfolio of vehicles that address. When you have to talk about addressable market, and that means bringing costs down and having a large array of products that can address the consumer group.
I don't even know how many models they have. So many models.
It's crazy. when you talk about affordable, quote unquote affordable EVs for Tesla, you have Model 3, Model Y. Like, cool. So mid-size sedan or compact sedan, crossover. As not affordable.
It is easy to remember some of them because they name them after all these animals. So they got the seal, the dolphin.
Yeah.
They've got the chin, the Han. They're aiming at the low cost small car market and at the higher. They're going more up market more and more. And looking to bump up their gross margins, which are actually looking pretty good right now. People don't realize that's changed. They're not like people are like, oh yeah, but they don't make any profit. No, they're making good gross margin now, but that's improving because they're introducing more and more higher class vehicles. So I mean, they're just nailing it, and you can look at it as a competition. It is to some extent, but it's also just like they're like king and queen. They're ruling together. They're transitioning the auto industry together, and I don't know if we want to go down the plug-in hybrid rabbit hole, but basically one thing Jose has highlighted repeatedly is plug-in hybrids have gotten bigger and bigger batteries in China. So they're more like the Chevy Volt, where you're 90% can drive on electricity probably. It's unclear because some people might be buying it because they don't have home charging or something.
Correct.
But
like a condo and
or just
apartments.
It's cool. Like we'll get to Li Auto later, but they do have bigger batteries, and but the notable thing is they did actually in the full electrics they increased their sales so rapidly last year that they went from not even close to Tesla at the beginning of 2023 to beating Tesla in the fourth quarter in BEV sales. So it's just like they had extreme, like I did an article where you compare their sales and Tesla's sales growth, and Tesla's sales growth looks good, but BYD's looked a lot better. It was like, whoa, for BEV sales.
Well, and if you look at the Dolphin and see, like particularly is the Dolphin the 3 competitor, or is it the Seal? I messed up.
I think the Dolphin has stepped down. The Seal.
The Seal is the 3 competitor. It's like a really compelling car. It's got like cool interior, cool features, things like that. And I made a note of it here. I love the rivalry between BYD and Tesla because when they go apples to apples and they start doing like this arms race with features, competition breeds innovation. It breeds excellence. So it's like, okay, we'll do the refreshed Model 3. Then down the road, we'll do the refreshed Model Y. Like the Model Y with the backseat entertainment screen and ventilated seats and refined suspension. Like they're going to take the best selling car in the world and make it better and better and better. So, and what's so funny is all these other auto brands are like MIA, like they're not even in the race, and they're doubling down. And this is, we stay on track here, but like the doubling down on the plug-in hybrids from the domestic auto like Ford and General Motors. That's kind of their playbook now.
Yeah. Well,
it's interesting.
I think we'll get back to it. I don't know. Is there anything to say about the other auto? Like, do we have anything? Then I mean, after you get down below them, then it's just like it's a pretty even pile of like you got BMW, GAC, Volkswagen, SGM.
I mean, there are a couple things to note. I mean, it is a 2-horse race. I mean, you have a BYD with was that 2,876,748. So basically 2.9 million. And then Tesla, and then drops way off to third. What's the difference between Tesla and second place?
It's 1.3 million
So Tesla is 1.3 million and
above BMW.
1.3 million above BMW. So Tesla is 1.8 million at second place, and BMW at third place is at 500,000.
Half a million. Yeah.
So, and that really illustrates it is a 2-horse race, and then everyone clumps. I'd say the thing to note from, because there's this pack of cars of brands below that, right? Everyone's got similar numbers, but what we do see is that the German brands are the brands that are hanging in there, the non Asian, I guess, brands. Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
It's really nuts. So you have Audi, BMW, and Mercedes that are running in the group. And it's really interesting that you have premium auto brands that are representing.
The premium German brands.
Where's domestic? And
sort of doing the best of the rest, but it's like, I was like, is it worth mentioning? I don't know. I mean, it is. I mean, if you add them up, you've add up all the German premium brands. You got a couple million there, so they are getting up there. If you treated them all as one.
And this list goes. It's also important to note. This list goes to what, 20 deep?
Yeah.
20 deep. Is General Motors on the list? Is Ford on the list? No. No.
I would have to check again, but no.
So if this isn't the tea leaves.
But it's heavily the Chinese brands too, because the Chinese market is, but still, I mean, they want to do well in China too. So,
but I mean, if you're looking to the future of the global auto market, and you're looking at these numbers, and you're not placing in the top 20, are they in board meetings looking at the same charts that we're looking and going like, hey guys, we're one of the biggest automakers in the world. Where do you think we are in the top 20 list?
Well,
we're not on it.
I will tell you, I know some of my charts.
Trouble in River City. That's all I'm saying.
Some of my charts got to the Toyota boardroom. I don't know how that went, because they're not. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's easy to change the Toyota boardroom's mind, but yeah, they get there sometimes. But
this is so much of and I've said this before, working for Tesla for years and trying to shape the market and change the market, which we did, is there's a proverbial cinder block, okay? And you have to bash it over people's heads over and over and over again before they even know they're getting hit in the head with a cinder block. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then they have to go, ow, and then they have to be like, oh, I think you're trying to get my attention. There's something really important we should probably pay attention to. And this is what we're seeing. There's this cinder block these numbers are cinder block being pounded on the head of domestic automakers. And it's like they're in a coma, and it's like, wake up,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and well, I think we covered it all pretty well. But there is the model topic. We didn't really exactly dive into the model. So I mean, if you look at the model chart, I mean, you have Tesla Model Y, which, as you know, everybody knows now, is the best-selling model in the world of any kind.
Which we should have. They're not ticker tape parades in Times Square, like ba 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 and forever in peace. I mean, like how what more like patriotic that we have a product that's number one in the world. You don't hear about it.
It's
why aren't we here? Why isn't this front page in the New York Times?
It's like one of the most
Fox
American-made cars.
Yes.
It's being produced at the largest auto factory in the United States now, which is in California. So it's
again,
it's a momentous.
Does anyone know that?
I mean, and if you followed the industry for long, you know that there's a handful of models that just sit up there, like you know, as entitled as can be. Like, yeah, we're here every year.
Ford F-150.
This is our country club.
Toyota Camry. You know,
and Model Y just shot right up there and like stole the show. So it's
globally,
out of a movie.
Globally, yes.
Yeah.
RAV4 globally, we're talking Toyota owned it for a long time with the RAV4 and Corolla.
Yeah, and
right.
You've got the Ford F Series, which but
in the States,
yeah, they've at times been at the top But yeah, I mean, there's the Camry, the Corolla, there's the RAV4. I mean, they just sit up there like year after year, and I mean, just it's like one of those goofy movies where this guy disrupts this established, entitled, conservative community, like world.
Yeah, it's like Happy Gilmore.
Like like I'm here now, Happy Gilmore.
I'm a wacky guy that's good at golf. Yeah, it is that totally.
So
changes the game.
You've got the Model Y, which stands far above anything else. Then you got the BYD Song, which is mostly plug-in hybrids in China. So it's got a small number of BEVs in China.
Which again, I mean, you look at that, and the actual BEV variant of it is a little over 93,000.
Yeah. And the plug-in hybrid is 543,000.
543,000. So the combined is about half of Model Y.
Yeah, and it's BYD is interesting because you got the Song, then you got the Model 3, and then you've got the BYD Qin Plus or Qin Plus. I think it's pronounced Qin, which is similar to the Song, heavily plug-in hybrid. But then you've got 3 BYDs that are full electrics: the Yuan Plus, Atto 3, the Dolphin, the Seagull. Oh yeah, the Seagull was the other one I was trying to think of. So they're going more full electric with their newer models, but they still have a couple of big models that sell a lot of plug-in hybrids in China. But yeah, I mean, BYD and Tesla take 8 out of the top 10 spots, which is crazy. And then you've got a couple of other Chinese brands, few other Chinese brands. The Volkswagen ID4 is the first legacy automaker,
to their credit.
Yeah, and I mean the ID4 gets a lot of crap, and the ID3, but the ID4 is the first legacy EV on the list at number 12, and then the ID3 is at 15. So they get a lot of crap, but they are doing quite well. My sister and my uncle have one, and they both love it. So it's a great vehicle, I think.
I have a very close friend of mine who's a former Tesla, and he's at Volkswagen now, just working his tuchus off, doing everything he can to make it the best it can be within the system that exists within OEMs. And
I mean, my relatives absolutely love the vehicle, and I saw my uncle's a little bit ago, and he was like, I'll tell you, he's a salesman. He's like, I'll tell you, man, when I'm at a light and there's a Tesla next to me, I'm like, I'm happy with my car. He loves his ID4.
Good.
Compared to the Teslas he sees everywhere, which are everywhere.
Yeah. So. One that is kind of cool too, because the ID4, ironically, has more of a unicorn factor. Because Teslas have become ironically, because you'd be like, oh, Volkswagen. But Teslas have become ubiquitous, particularly in our neck of the woods. There's a Tesla at every intersection. It's strange if there's not a Tesla at every intersection where we live. But if you see an ID4, I think, hey, an ID4, isn't that great?
Yeah, I get super excited about it.
And what they did, even when ID4 first came out, the thing that really excited me about it was, one, I know Volkswagen builds great cars because I've been in a lot of Volkswagens, and they're phenomenally built. So I was like, you have this great a car that's going to be manufactured very well, and the price was so great. So I was like, man, now it's just about educating people to say, hey, here's this amazing Volkswagen that doesn't need gas.
Yeah.
And it's actually better than gas-powered Volkswagens could ever possibly be in X, Y, and Z.
I mean, that's the thing that, we probably get we forget to say these days, because we've been doing this for over 10 years, is like, it's just better than anything that's not electric. Like it doesn't matter. Just pick the EV that you feel drawn to. And it's going to be better than any non-electric option. Mm-hmm. And it's like, there doesn't need to be a fight, as there often is, I guess maybe more on social media than in real life, about which EV is better.
Correct.
Like, it's cars. We're drawn to a look. Or even
a
color can be, it's like, oh, I like how that one looks. We can justify with so many things. Oh, I'm getting it because of this, the efficiency, the blah, blah, blah. No, you like how it looks. Yeah. And you want to be seen with it, and you want to look at it every day. And that's what it is. So if you're drawn to we have, there's a CleanTech PR lady who's lives in the region, who we worked with a lot for years, and she just got a Mustang Mach-E. She's thrilled. I'm like, oh man,
I love that car.
Might be my favorite actually EV to see on the road. It's just always,
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's different. You don't have to figure out, oh, is that, no, that's electric. But it's great. Just to wrap up on the models, though, there's also Li Auto, which I think is fascinating because a couple of years ago, someone asked me, like, what do you think of Li Auto for investment? And I was like, they make these oversized plug-in hybrids. I don't think I'm not that into them. They're killing it. They're by far the most successful EV Chinese startup now. They have 3 models and they're all in the top 20 globally.
Wow.
They're all full-size giant beasts of the road. So it's like, it's been something I'm like, gosh, really? But that's what we talked about last week with the Cybertruck. It makes me think, the Cybertruck might have actually a really good market in Tesla. If Li Auto is just killing it with these
full-size EV.
These vehicles, which I don't even think I think they look not great.
They look like a couch. Yeah, it's kind of like my
like the Cybertruck could really rope in some sales there. And I wrote a story which we weren't going to talk about, but where I think Tesla's target is 250,000 sales a year for the Cybertruck. That's what Elon thinks they'll get to. If China ends up being a big market for it, I think they could be 400,000. What do you a year?
I think China is an ace in the hole for Cybertruck. I didn't really think about the Chinese market until there was coverage on Tesla bringing Cybertruck, and then we talked about it. It's really the sky's the limit in China because the market is so huge, and a lot of people say, "Oh, the last thing the world needs is a big SUV," and thinking of the Hummer EV, and of course the Cybertruck falls into that, and all these things. But there is a market in China that will gobble it up ferociously.
We are surrounded here in our little Tesla Model 3s by big SUVs. Like, they're going to be sold.
Correct.
So, like, you can't say they're not going to be. I don't know.
What they have to do, the point is, economies of scale has to bring the price down, so they're not like $130,000. That's a big thing. Another thing is, I had to Google Li Auto. Like, I was reading their reports in preparation for this. And I was like, who are they again? And then I look it up and it just goes to show there's this cultural ignorance.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I follow the auto market. I don't know everything, obviously, because I had to Google Li and learn more about it. But then I'm like, oh, there's this huge thing. It's kind of like people that don't know about Tesla. We're they're like, Tesla, what is that? And you're just like, oh, their car was the best-selling car in the world last year. And you're like, you still have to say that to some people.
Those 3 models combined sold about more than 350,000 units.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you think when Tesla was at 350,000 sales, we were like, look at this. They did it.
Yeah.
They did it.
I remember.
But still, like 5 out of 7 people you talk, it was like, who? What's that? Who,
Yeah.
So.
I remember in Q4 of 2012 when everybody, when you said Tesla, everyone thought of the 80s rock band. Literally, when you Google Tesla, the first first 3 pages were about the band. I think I told you this. I was delivering a car in upstate New York in 2012. And I had to sleep over because the delivery happened at like 9 o'clock, whatever. So anyway, I was wearing my Tesla jacket and I walked into this bar and the guy thought I was a roadie for the band. He's like, "You with Tesla?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Are they in town?" And I was like, "Oh no, the electric car company." And the guy looked at me like I had a parrot on my shoulder. He was like, "Like electric what?" And then I remember thinking like, "Oh, it's gonna be so awesome." when I Googled the word Tesla. And it's not the band, gosh. And of course that day is long since passed. Another thing about China that I thought was fascinating, and correct me if I'm wrong, is BYD now the biggest manufacturer by numbers in China, overtaking Volkswagen? Did I read that correctly?
I believe I have seen that.
How? I wrote it down here.
And it's
I think it's BYD surpasses Volkswagen in China as biggest automaker.
We should have had a headline saying. I mean, honestly, I should do a story on that. I'll do one after,
and again,
it just was like hidden in the midst of all. But that's what's happening with the EV sales reports too. Is there's so many milestones that you just miss some big ones.
And again, it's kind of like it's kind of analogous to and I'm not saying any names, and you might not even think I'm talking about the person I'm thinking of, but it's like crazy rich guys on social media say so much wacky stuff that they'll say something really amazing and it gets missed in the wackiness because there's just so much, or something particularly wacky gets missed because there's just so much wackiness. It's the same thing here where it's like there's so much amazing movement happening.
Well, I think
that stuff like that.
I think it's also now sixth globally. I have to check this. Yeah, we'll have to check.
Which is bananas.
But it is, and Tesla's getting up there globally as well. So it's like all of this stuff is reshuffling, and we're not even like talking about it. Even us, not much. I mean, we are talking about it. Actually, we are talking about it right now. We're talking.
The very
Our mouths are moving. Sounds are coming out. It's almost like we're talking about it.
It's almost like we're getting the word out.
Yeah.
To reiterate that the Tesla's Fremont factory is the largest producer of automobiles in America now. Has anyone let that sink in? Does anybody know that?
Yeah. And I would, one thing to wrap up on the BYD Tesla rivalry, which you highlighted, which I wasn't really going to go down that path as you did. Like, we might not even have the Highland and the coming, Model Y version, if it wasn't for the Chinese market being so competitive.
Correct.
Like it might be, we might get that upgrade in a couple of years if it wasn't that the Chinese market is so competitive. That it's like Tesla's like, oh, we have to upgrade our cars or else we're gonna lose sales.
Basically, BYD is doing to Tesla what Tesla did to the entire global auto industry. Yeah. So Tesla is like, hey, you can make electric vehicles that are way more compelling than gasoline internal combustion engines. Everybody else in the world was like, oh boy, Tesla's gonna eat our lunch. Now Tesla's like, haha, we make the best electric vehicles. And then China, BYD is like, hey, we're gonna make that too. And then Tesla's like, whoa, that's a pretty sweet car. Whoa, it has more features than ours. Whoa, it looks really nice. Whoa, those numbers are great. Well, and so Tesla's got a little fire under their feet. And I kind of love that.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times recently where I was like, Tesla's sort of getting to be this complacent big dog in the auto market, just like it was disrupting. I'm like, one thing that they're not rolling out a lot of models like all these Chinese companies do. It's not just BYD, Neo, Xpeng, Li Auto, a little bit less, but they're rolling out a lot of new models and upgrading stuff, notably even like MG, like not known to be like, oh, it's now Chinese owned, British history, but it's got this MG4, which is like, holy cow. We had a European, sort of come up with a long list of potential finalists for our CleanTechnica Car of the Year award for Europe. The first time we're doing it for Europe as well as a US one, and I was like, wow, they have a lot of options, but it ended up being the majority of our finalists ended up being Chinese brands. But you're just looking at them and they're like, wow, this is I wish we had this. But then the MG4 stood out. It was like, you get a lot for a really good price with the MG4, and it's selling really well. It's selling well in Europe. It's selling well in other markets. It's like a hidden, because of BYD and Tesla getting all the glory. It's sort of hidden there, but it's doing well around the world.
It's another one I had to Google.
Yeah, I love this model. I was like, I wish we had this in the U.S. market, but it is going to a lot of markets now, not just Europe and China. And but yeah, it just Elon said on the recent Tesla conference call that, I'll just read the quote in case you missed. A lot of people don't listen to the call. I will say, if you don't like reading Elon's tweets and stuff, I totally get that. But he's much different on the conference calls. So I don't know. I find him much more interesting to tune into on conference calls than on Twitter.
Well, even then, people are like, he's so obnoxious on conference calls. I'm like,
no, it doesn't come across like that. I mean, but so his quote here, our observation.
He gives some good nuggets.
Yeah.
And if anything, I don't think people mind nuggets enough from what he says. He drops some bombs in those calls. Sometimes.
Yeah, and you never know, like, if he'll be on, because like a couple of years ago he said he wasn't going to be on any calls anymore. Unless it was critical.
Like, so boring.
I don't think, was there one call?
There was one call.
There was one.
And they must have got so much feedback.
There was one call, and then he was only going to be on conference calls if he was really necessary, critical. And he skipped one call and ever since. But anyway, his comment on the Chinese market, our observation is generally that the Chinese car companies are the most competitive car companies in the world. So I think they will have significant success outside of China, depending on what kind of tariffs or trade barriers are established. frankly, I think that if there are not trade barriers established, they will pretty much demolish most other car companies in the world. So they're extremely good. So I don't know. We don't know exactly what brands he's thinking about, but BYD, Xpeng, Neo, MG, Geely, Zeekr. There are a lot of really compelling, and you look at once you're like, oh, what is that car? And you look at it, and you're like, oh wow, it looks really good on the outside. You look in the interior, you're like, this is a freaking good car. Like you're like, this is a real deal. Like this is what GM and Ford and everyone should be doing, but they have like no capability to do. Yeah.
And again, it's kind of history repeating. What I see from the Chinese auto market, where from the Western side, it's people are not either completely oblivious to the existence of these companies, or like me, I could say I'm starting to trickle in to the Zeekr and the BYD. Oh, so amazing, like amazing. And then you're going like, what? And you have this inclination. Oh, this is the future. This is going to be huge. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing that happened 12 years ago with the Model S. Most people had no idea what it was. And then people that were looking at it, they went, oh, this is going to destroy everything. Yeah. Like, this is the future. This is obviously where the market's going. It's quantifiably superior in practically every metric. And then now we're seeing that at an industry level coming from the Chinese market, where there's this kind of foreshadowing. And God, I wish I could be a fly in the wall. And I think Jim Farley is a smart guy.
I think he gets it. I think he gets it.
They can't say it publicly, but they have to be. They are in an existential crisis. The domestic General Motors and Ford specifically. Ironically, Stellantis, which gets dumped on a lot domestically, because they're like, where's Stellantis? Because like we were talking about, the Fiat brand is basically non-existent in North America now from a sales perspective.
Ram not doing well. Dodge not doing well. Jeep.
Yeah, but if you look at Stellantis globally, and I think I had in my notes here, they're doing some stuff. Oh yeah, let's see. This is what was interesting to me. As far as China, that Hyundai and Kia, as well as Stellantis, are not in the Chinese market.
Yeah, I know. That was one. I was like,
that blew my mind to learn that.
I know, it did.
They're not in the biggest auto market.
I know, and
in the world.
I should have known that. I felt embarrassed. I was like, how do I not know this? I've been editing these reports forever.
I was today years old, as the kids say.
But I mean, I've been editing like these articles for years, but there's only 20. There's the ranking, and there's all these Chinese brands, and so you're just like, oh well, everyone else is just not
falls off the list.
But I didn't realize, or I didn't remember. Yeah, like exactly. It struck me. I was like, holy cow, they're not there. But it also means there's a big door for Hyundai and Kia, because the problem is Korea and China.
Their number.
Yeah, that explains them.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry to.
Well, I mean, again, it's kind of like it's kind of this global market worldview and then a domestic market worldview. Because I remember with Tesla, we were like, Tesla's not allowed to sell cars in Connecticut or Texas or Michigan. Back in the day, it's gotten better and better with Michigan, at least Michigan and Connecticut, and some other states. And we're like, man, just imagine if they could have access to those, if they could sell, instead of doing these direct ship shenanigans and things that they have to do. Which don't even get me started about Tesla.
Texas, being in Texas where you can't sell.
They're headquartered in Texas. They want to change their corporate from Delaware to Texas, yet they can't sell their product in Tesla. If that's not a cockamamie, like topsy-turvy world,
it's crazy.
I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that. But so anyway, you think like, gee, if Stellantis had access, and Hyundai and Kia for that matter, to the Chinese market, boy, that would help.
I'm a little surprised with Stellantis. I mean, Hyundai and Kia, Korea has a complicated situation with China.
Yeah.
And that also gets down to the batteries. Like there have been big battery stories between China and Korea in the past, but you got LG Chem, SK On, and Samsung from Korea, Samsung SDI, and then you got all the Chinese companies that have come up. I mean, they were leading, and then CATL Cattle just came and like took over took the lead by far, and you got other BYD and others. So there's a big competition there that I don't fully understand. They've got
there's a dynamic.
They've got they've got a lot of beef with each other. I mean, Korea, especially with China, it's a big giant right on its doorstep. So there's sort of it's a different dynamic. So, but I think they are entering the market. So, they should do better than they are doing. But that explains it. And Stellantis as well. But regarding the U.S. centric thing, it actually was a little thing that like niggled at me when I was listening to the conference call where Drew, I think from Tesla, was talking about how Tesla is like right now just certain percentage of the market. I think it's at 2% of the market, and the numbers he was referencing was like the U.S. market. And I was like, why are you focusing on the U.S. market when it's like, this is about the whole company and it's global.
Yeah.
And I was talking about how much of the market they would like to have when there's more EVs are sold. Oh yeah, you mentioned like 7 or 9% or something of vehicles sold were electric, and I was like, that's the U.S. market. Like the global market is 15% BEVs. China is 25%, or something like it's just. I was like,
it's like you're referencing a market that is behind the adoption rate of the rest of the industrialized world.
Yeah.
So that would be the primary market for these vehicles. Yeah. So it is interesting. There's kind of a cultural bias there, even from within the industry.
I got to find find the global share before I get that wrong. Sorry, there's too many reports.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's so much data that there's these like golden nuggets within them that when you see them, you're like, oh my gosh, oh, this is a good one. While you're looking for that, we're looking at the top 20 models, all of the top 20 plug-in models. All 20 models are being made in China. Yeah. So there's three things here worth noting. All 20 models are made in China. 16 of the 20 belong to Chinese OEMs, and 7 come from BYD alone. That's crazy. And again, I keep bringing up like tea leaves. If you're looking at, you're reading the tea leaves, you're looking like where the world's going. So does China. So does the world. And
I mean, what was more telling than the fact that the Highland Model 3 came to China first?
Oh yeah.
Like, what a black eye. It's like, oh yeah, we're introducing a new updated Model 3. It'll go to China first. The US will get it. I was like, oh my, we're really behind the curve, But yeah, so the numbers here, I knew something was a little wrong. So it was 15% BEV in December, 22% plug-in vehicle share in December. For the full year, it was 11% BEV or 16% plug-in vehicles. But still, that's well above the U.S. market is 7%. So we're behind. We're behind.
Yeah,
China
China is this freight train barreling down the track, and and the damsel in distress that's strapped to the track is domestic. And some others, but I just keep thinking it'll be so interesting how they negotiate these next couple of years.
It's a good place to wrap up, but you have a few notes there that I've spied. I'm very curious to see what you wanted to say about the Chevy Jolt and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, so in preparation for this episode, Zach sends me all these articles, 3 or 4 articles to read, and one of them mentioned the foray that General Motors and Ford, but particularly references General Motors is going to kind of double down on their plug-in hybrids, and which it's a mixed bag. I think ultimately it's good.
10 years ago, this is what a lot of people were calling for.
It's exactly right. They kind of they kind of
They listened a decade late.
yeah, and now
But-
because what's so funny now is what they need now. That ship's kind of sailed because what they need now is economies of scale through battery supply chain.
Yeah, that's good.
They don't need to double down. As we've said, I will try to make this as brief as possible.
No, that's fine. You're good.
I had a Chevy Volt.
No one's got anywhere to go.
I have a Chevy.
Put it on in the car. Oh, by the way, don't forget to like, subscribe, thumbs up. We're here doing this in person, risking our lives, spreading viruses potentially for you. So please, at least hit the bell, subscribe, give us money, and hit the bell.
As the kids say, smash the like button.
Yes.
And because I think this is genuinely interesting stuff we're talking about here.
Sorry, but keep going.
Yeah, so I had a Chevy Volt, and I loved it, and because I've always said plug-in hybrids are the gateway drug to EVs because you plug it in, you drive 35 miles, you don't use gas, and then you start realizing, why I never use gas. And then when the gas motor does kick in, it's like this penalty. You're like, no, I had to use gas today. And then you start gaming it. Like I always said, I intentionally kept my tank at 1/8 of a tank, which is like the minimum that General Motors would allow. I think the Volt you can do. And that shaves like 75 pounds of fluid weight from the car. So I was like, oh, I can run more efficiently and all this stuff. And then you realize I'm carrying several hundred pounds of machinery that I never use, because you're carrying an engine, a transmission, an exhaust system, a gas tank, and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I wish I could take that 700 pounds and turn it into a battery pack and have this thing go 300 miles. And, and then, but yeah.
Yeah.
But in lieu, I get it though. And here's why I get it. If you don't have a Tesla and you need one car, having an electric car is a tough sell. Why? Because long distance DC charging networks that are not supercharger suck.
Yeah, but they're all supposed to get
What's
access.
that?
They're all supposed to get access.
Yeah, but when we have no information on that,
we don't know.
and don't get me started into charge port placement on cars that won't reach V3 and below
I
superchargers.
think there's a little bit of a question. They all followed the trend, the wave.
Yeah.
What if there's
Lead
a pullback?
follow or get out of the way?
What if something happens and there's a bit of a pullback? I don't know.
You mean
They haven't
politically?
done the automakers. What have they done so far? Like, if there was an opportunity, let's put it this way: if there was an opportunity, I bet several of those automakers would love to change plans again. And be like,
absolutely.
I'd be like, no, we're not going to use Tesla's
And it's
standard actually.
Well, it's so dynamic because, and Elon has said this before, a plug-in hybrid is this duck-billed platypus. So it's not a great water creature and it's not a great land creature. It's this thing that kind of lives in both worlds. So a plug-in hybrid is not a great gas car and it's not a great electric car. It's like okay at both because you're taking two powertrains and you're shoehorning them into one chassis. So you have a battery, an electric motor, and a one-speed gearbox, and all this stuff. And then you have a gasoline engine, and a transmission, and a gas tank, and exhaust system. And you're plugging it. You have all this complexity in manufacturing, which is terrible for the complexity of manufacturing the car, terrible for margins. It's a very expensive car to build. You lose storage, all this stuff. So it's interesting. The need to build a plug-in hybrid from a OEM standpoint, the need to do it is to meet federal emissions and efficiency standards. There's no other superlative that comes with it. And that's a problem because Tesla's pitch is not that it just meets emissions standards. Tesla, and the reason why they're so successful, is showing that an electric car, using the metrics that you use to measure what makes a great car, are quicker, roomier, safer, have more storage, are easier to maintain. You lose those things with a plug-in hybrid. You don't have the storage. You don't have the performance because you have the weight of two powertrains. So they're not building a better mousetrap. You know what I mean?
CleanTechnica readers are not plug-in hybrid fans, but I think there are a few portions of the market where I think this is still a logical option.
And it absolutely is. So because there are people that are scared of electric vehicles.
We have that group. We have the people who are just
Which
scared of electric vehicles. A lot of people. Like we think, oh, it's over. The transition's happening. But there's still the different phases of adoption. And you end up with the laggards. And you have the other phases where like they're skeptical. They're skeptics. There's different phases, and we're not at the end phase. So there's still other people. And I know someone who just bought a hybrid, and he told me about it, expecting me to be excited because he got a hybrid, like conventional hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude,
no bueno.
You do not understand. I am not a fan. This is not something that's exciting me. Like I'm just like dropping my head now. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's like saying.
But it woke me up.
You got a BlackBerry. Or something.
But it woke me up because I was like, oh, there's still a lot of people who think this is a cutting edge step or something, or this is like there's a big step. So with the plug-in hybrids, it is a little bit of a big step because you have if that makes any sense.
And it is the gateway drug.
It is the gateway drug. And you have people who they need it. They absolutely need it.
Yeah, they live in an apartment.
I mean, they need it psychologically.
Psychologically.
So,
yes.
I mean, they need it psychologically.
It's a crutch.
They need to feel like, okay, I can at least go to the gas station if I need to. And then they find out, oh, I'd rather just plug in at home and charge. So then there also is practically the group that I lived in apartment complexes where going to charge was not. It's not convenient unless it's like exactly where you're going all the time anyway, which worked out fine for us. But we had the BMW i3 Rex, and the Rex was great because you just knew I can use my full battery and I don't have to worry what if it runs out because I have this gas tank, and I spent $5 on gas in 9 months, and most of that was probably like the engine has to run itself from time to time,
just like
to stay fresh
every couple of weeks.
So it's like I hated it when it turned on, but it was like it allowed me to use the full battery without thinking, because and anyway, it was just like not having home charging. It was really useful to have it just in case. And there were like 2 drives where it was like, oh, we needed it, thank goodness.
And I totally get that. Like
that
apartment dwellers.
I mean, that was 5 years ago. It's a different market, but at the same time, there's still a lot of people who are going to be in that situation. So plug-in hybrids will make sense. We see in China where if you have a big battery, it's still you're still going to drive on electricity a lot. So I think that's I'm very curious to see what happens with GM and knowing GM's audience, like their customer base. They're more conservative, so they are more going to feel a need to not go full electric. So I think they need to be walked into that.
Well, there's this narrative too
that people are being I think
people are being forced into it, which again is the wrong narrative. Like did I tell you? Really, I think it was Motor Trend on Instagram. I saw it, and they talked about this transition to plug-in hybrids. There were 130 comments, and I read them all. 3 of them were not negative. 3 out of 130 were not negative. And the 3 weren't positive, they just weren't negative.
Oh my God.
People were enraged. There was no positive one being like, oh, that's cool. People were like, they'll never take away my, you'll have to kill me first. There's this vitriol.
We get into our bubble and we think that's the world.
Yeah.
And it happens with a lot of stuff. But for those of us, obviously, anyone watching this video, you're in a bubble for sure. Yeah. Like we are in a bubble where we think everyone knows what's happening. This is obvious. And then you get into another bubble like that. And you realize, wow, I am the black sheep here. I am the odd one out, and I can't even probably speak up without getting like all the barbs thrown at me. Yeah. So it's a different, So I'm a little bit happy with what GM's doing because I don't think they can go full electric and survive, honestly. Because I don't think their customer base would go that quickly.
Well, and their economies of scale. But yeah. Well, even my in-laws, my father-in-law drives a Tesla Model X. Yeah. And my mother-in-law has a Ford Fusion several years old, and it needs to be replaced, but they can't go all electric. No. They can't do it. So I'm telling them, I was like, maybe RAV4 plug-in, because she's like, oh, it's something easy to park or whatever, but I can't. They can't. No, in their mind, they can't do it.
There's definitely people you talk to, and even within one household, where it's just going to take longer. and I think it's at least get them into plug-in hybrids. Like that's a big
That's
step
what I'm saying.
up from a hybrid. I mean, I'm not.
It's the gateway drug.
I don't support. Yeah, but anyway, last note there. We'll jump to, and then we're done.
Oh yeah, the
Rivian.
Jolt. Oh yeah, Rivian. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so the Chevy Jolt was mentioned in the article. Like Jose suggested, hey, how about the Chevy Jolt? And there was a guy like a decade ago.
That's not a real car, by the way.
No, but there was a guy who created this fake Chevy website, GM website, for the Chevy Jolt, designed it, and I was like, oh, I put the note in there. I was like, oh, someone actually came up with that car and designed a fake one. And then I went to check. I was like, oh, the website's still online. It's still there. He just left it up. So it's great. So there is a website for the Chevy Jolt, even though it's not a real car.
And the thing's sweet. Like I totally rock that. Like, I think it looks awesome.
No, it's way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
So, but the last thing, the Rivian note, I think that's an interesting one too. Rivian's first mover advantage in EV pickups. That's a good.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious. I don't have anything to say on it. I see your note, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. But what do you?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think. It's just very interesting that with the R1T, there was this buildup of because you always have this with a new anticipated product where you have the pre-orders, and then every car you build, there's a buyer for it because you've accumulated thousands of pre-orders or whatever. So that's what they did. It was kind of this. They opened the deluge. As fast as they could build them, there were buyers, and so they by their virtue were the number one electric pickup truck. Then you had the Ford F-150 Lightning come along, and I think we saw in the charts that, or in that particular article, the F-150 has since overtook it.
It did really well in the last quarter.
Correct.
In December especially.
Yeah. So so I was just saying that it was interesting that the first mover advantage is one. Rivian, it's a high-end truck. Pickup trucks these days are can get really expensive, but it just does illustrate that the first movers, particularly in electric vehicle space, are kind of this kind of lifestyle buyer, and they're taking advantage of that.
I love that they're three radically different trucks there. Mm-hmm. You got the Cybertruck, Rivian, and the Ford F-150 Lightning, and they're so different that it's like, oh, this is really nice because people who want totally different trucks can get them. And I initially
completely different personalities.
Yeah, different personality, and you might like all of them. Like it's just which one do you like more? Because they're so different. The headlights were something that I didn't take to for a long time.
Me too.
For years.
Me too.
And I was like, this is going to appeal to like Seattle software engineers, mm-hmm. and I was concerned this is not going to appeal to a lot of people. But you see them around, and you spot them immediately, mm-hmm. and you're like, oh, that's different, and it's sort of fun and sort of cute, and it's like, oh, maybe this actually ended up being a good idea. And now I see the Rivian Amazon delivery trucks all over, and it's like, oh, look at that cute delivery truck, and it's like, it's sort of like the Google self-driving car. They tried to make it cute and friendly, mm-hmm. and I feel like those headlights sort of do that with Rivian. And so there's
a lot of equity in that.
Yeah, you get
design equity.
You get a few benefits out of it. You're more noticeable if people think it's a cool look. There's nothing else like it. Like mm-hmm. you don't have it's like, oh, I love that. And then if you're seeing them on the Amazon delivery trucks, they're subconsciously like you're just getting. It's like this subliminal advertising you're getting constantly. It's like, oh, I'm starting to like those Rivian headlights.
And for me,
people don't have any clue they're related.
For me, knowing the R1T, at first I didn't like the front grille of the R1T and R1S as well. The lights, I thought the eyes looked like a cute like Pokemon anime thing, but it has switched it's transformed, which is interesting. Now I don't see those kind of stadium lights, whatever you want to call them. I don't see them as eyes. I see them as snouts. And then I see the LED running lights on the ends as kind of like a furrowed brow.
Okay, so cut the cameras. It's getting crazy.
So now it looks kind of, and again, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, and now it looks like aggressive. So it's gone from like anime Pokemon character to like almost like a snake or a snouted animal.
Wow, that's funny.
Is that interesting?
Yeah, well, it still has like a kind of cutesy look to it to me, but mm-hmm. I've grown to like it after not liking it for years. So. Mm. Sometimes things
like Cybertruck
grow on you. Yeah, well, the Cybertruck I liked immediately, and Then it sort of was like, oh, it's been around, and I sort of lost interest in it.
What Cybertruck?
Yeah, the Cybertruck. But then when we went to see it in the store, I mean, that was like, I was not expecting to be affected by that. And like increasingly, I'm like, man, the Cybertruck's really got something going. In person, it looks more normal, if that makes sense. Although it's still like, wow, that's different. It's like it's in the category of, oh, that's an SUV a normal person could buy. I know it's a truck, but you see the Escalades, the Suburbans, all these big vehicles around here, and I'm like, you know what? This is going to stand out, obviously, especially with that windshield wiper, but and the angles. Yeah. But at the same time, you start seeing them around, and it's like the Rivian. People are going to be like, oh, I've seen that truck around like every day. I like it, and I could see it becoming something that people just buy like any other big vehicle, SUV or pickup truck. Yeah. It's like they like it. I don't know. We'll see. I'm still, it's one of the biggest questions. That and Rivian's future are like two of the biggest questions in the market for me. So it's always fun to revisit it, even though we don't know. And we're done. But I found it interesting when they asked about like growth projections from Tesla. Elon and the CFO were like, we haven't really. Has anyone crunched that? Has anyone come up with an estimate? Nobody really has an estimate because we don't.
It's a wild card.
We don't have a clue.
Yeah, it is a wild card.
So it's like I mean, nobody's really.
It's uncharted. It's uncharted territory.
Yeah. So
2024 is going to be wild. Wow. The next gen Tesla. Gosh, when are they going to drop that? It'll be so interesting.
Yeah, but that's it. That's our show. I think we have a lot to improve. We know that, guys. If you give us feedback, we're happy to take it. We don't know. We're trialing a lot of new stuff in this show, this episode. So we will definitely look for where we can improve. But I think it went pretty well. I was happy with the.
Hopefully, it sounds better.
Yeah, hopefully it is. Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started CleanTechnica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years, we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.